Hey, what's happening, guys? Anthony here with the Silver Screen Analysis, and today we're going to talk about one of my all-time favorite actors, Sylvester Stallone. But we're not going to be talking about Rocky or Rambo, and we're not going to be diving into some of his other classics like Cliffhanger, Demolition Man, or Tango and Cash. And we won't be discussing some of his not-so-great films like Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, or Driven, or Judge Dredd, or Rhinestone either. Today we're going to look back at some of his underrated, undermentioned, or underappreciated, and sometimes forgotten films that I really enjoy. So let's just get right into this list, and these films are in no particular order. First up, we have Nighthawks from 1981. This is an entertaining action thriller with a storyline that adds a great blend of a crime drama to it, as Stallone plays Deke Da Silva, a New York City cop who will try to stop an eccentric international terrorist played by Rutger Hauer. This film also stars Billy Dee Williams as Stallone's partner, and they are great together as far as on-screen chemistry. This was just a gritty cop film with Stallone, Williams, and Hauer all bringing in great performances. The settings convey a dark and ominous New York City very effectively, with the time period just giving the entire story a 70s action movie vibe, given that it came out in 81 before all of the over-the-top genre films the decade became known for. Rutger Hauer's performance, along with the writing of his character, gave this film a great villain with loads of charm and charisma, and Stallone, he was fantastic in this performance, and he captures the persona effectively, giving the character some depth that I think you can really connect with. The script builds tension well, the musical score was cold and methodical to fit perfectly with the pace of the story, there are some entertaining practical effects, and in the end, this is a solid crime thriller. Next up, we have Assassins from 1995. Now, this film came out during the run of Stallone's dominance at the cinema, so you may not buy it as an underrated film, but I would contend that it is an undermentioned one. Richard Donner's direction was subtle but excellent, as he captures this world of international assassins and high-profile targets effectively to lure you into the plotline, one that in my opinion delivers plenty of suspenseful but grounded action. This one also starred a young Antonio Banderas, who at the time was just coming off Desperado and about to begin his run as a leading male in American cinemas. His performance may not resonate with everyone, but I really enjoyed it. I think Banderas captured the persona of a young, arrogant, but at the same time very skilled assassin with an appealing charisma. The story followed a veteran assassin played by Stallone who is trying to get that one last contract completed, but he keeps running into a younger hitman played by Banderas who is virtually just a thorn in his side. This really sets up a tense game of cat and mouse that I think the script as well as Donner's direction weave into an intriguing action-filled adventure with Stallone, Banderas, and Julianne Moore all delivering great performances. Next up, we have F.I.S.T. from 1975. This was a great film in my opinion, being a fan of Stallone. This was his first film after Rocky. He co-wrote the screenplay and he starred in the lead of this story about a blue-collar worker in 1930s Cleveland that just rises up the ranks of the industry to eventually join and become president of the Teamsters Union in the 1960s. I thought the story was interesting and certainly very compelling. It may not have been perfect, but Stallone's performance, in my opinion, are what make this a memorable movie. Stallone portrays his character over almost 3 decades, and I think he did a fantastic job of evolving the personality and the emotions of this man that really came from the streets to eventually run a massive union to protect his workers, regardless of how heartless he had to be to do so. The storyline builds loads of tension, it delivers some compelling drama, and conveys the many cultural and social dynamics of the era that really impacted the industrial industries and the trade unions. I thought it peeled back the layers of the script timely, and it does deliver some very impactful dialogue. Impactful in my opinion primarily because of Stallone's performance as this man who just works his way up the ranks of the organized labor movement. I thought this film was also well crafted, the direction was very good in a very subtle way, and I think all the performances definitely did make the most out of the material. Next up, we have Daylight from 1996. Now, not everyone is going to like this film, as it does follow all the common tropes of the real-time disaster thriller. We have some criminals on the run, they crash and trigger some explosive damage on an underwater roadway tunnel that connects Jersey with Manhattan, and Stallone will have to be the hero and save the trapped people inside. It's very generic, I get that. It feels common, it is predictable, some of the dialogue is very cheesy, and you can see the story arcs coming long before they are delivered, but I will contend that this is a fun movie that serves its purpose as guilty pleasure entertainment. Stallone delivered what this movie needed, a carbon copy hero with just enough charisma to connect with the viewer. He has some painfully scripted dialogue, but it all works for the charm of the story in my opinion. I think the musical score and the dramatic moments all do their best to kind of build some intensity, but you never really truly feel the uneasiness completely, as you know all is going to work out for the Italian stallion. He will certainly lose a few characters along the way, but still manage to save as many as he can. I think the cast really all serve their purpose, and together with the tense scenarios that this story builds, this is a fun entry in the Stallone filmography despite some of its flaws. Coming up next, we have ICU from 2002, also known as D-Tox. Another movie many people may find a little on the routine side. I still think this was an entertaining psychological thriller with Stallone sort of abandoning his usual action persona to deliver a more tormented character. The story follows Stallone, who plays an FBI agent that checks himself into a remote rehabilitation clinic for law enforcement officers who have various stages of traumatic stress disorders from their line of work. As they begin turning up murdered one by one, Stallone's character realizes this serial killer is connected to his past and possibly targeting him. So definitely a simple premise that, in my opinion, creates a very solid, ominous atmosphere for a dark thriller. The remote settings work great for capturing an eerie setting for the storyline to really help capture the tone effectively. I thought the cast was solid all around. In addition to Stallone, you have Charles S. Dutton, Chris Christopherson, Tom Berenger, Jeffrey Wright, Stephen Lang, Robert Patrick, and Courtney B. Vance, and I think they all add something to this film. I think the story was able to build some genuine unpredictability, and despite not necessarily reinventing the wheel, it still delivers more than enough entertainment. Next up, we have The Specialist from 1994. Another film that came out during Stallone's theater run. This one came out after his very successful 1993, where he starred in Demolition Man and Cliffhanger, two solid action films that I think in the end overshadowed this more subtle and somber action movie. It was a great blend of a romance story and an action movie, and I think they were merged together in an appealing way. It also delivers some strong performances from Eric Roberts and James Woods. The story follows Sharon Stone's character, who for the most part is just seeking revenge against some mobsters that killed her parents when she was a child. To get her vengeance, she will employ a freelance bomb expert and use her seduction to entice him, as well as her sexual manipulation to keep her victims at ease, something Stone is very convincing at with her performance. This was another film that may be a little too slow paced for many, but I still found this to be a very understated movie in the Stallone collection. He still conveys some of the familiar leading star action tropes, but he does capture some much added depth to his character that I think make it different than his usual performances, which also helped give some added foundation to his connection with Stone's character and their romantic connection overall. This film really focused more on the character personality traits than the action itself, and it in the end resulted in a good blend of both. Coming up next, we have Lockup from 1989. Now, I won't deny this is a relatively well-known film in Stallone's library to many, but I also feel that it often gets overlooked as it came out right between Rambo 3 and Rocky 5 and was overshadowed by his Tango and Cash collaboration with Kurt Russell. Lockup is certainly a routine prison movie with that common fish-out-of-water concept, but I think Stallone's performance, as well as Donald Sutherland's as the vicious warden, just make this film great in my opinion. The storyline is simple but effective in pulling you into the world of the prison, and naturally you can just get behind Stallone's character and root for his success. It's a very cold and dreary film that just lands its intended impact by keeping a nice pace and a smooth progression by really never lingering too long on the subplots. The focus of the story remained on Stallone's character getting his due justice, something that was even more compelling with the amazing performance of Sutherland, who felt like he captured this evil character with ease, and he really proves that a true villain can make a common action film fantastic. This movie had a tightly edited story with naturally organic dialogue, and when you have Sutherland and Stallone shining like they did, they give the film a true hero and villain, and they successfully build just tons of intrigue and intensity. Coming up next, we have Victory from 1981. This sports drama may not have left the same lasting impression as Rocky, but it is still a great film to me, with Stallone shining alongside Hollywood legend Michael Caine. This one is set in World War II, and it tells the story of a group of POWs being held by the Germans in Nazi-occupied Paris, and as a propaganda stunt, the Germans will stage a soccer match against the Allied POWs, who are going to use this opportunity to try to make their escape. To me, this was a sports drama that was equally reliant on building the dramatic impact of the social relevance, as well as incorporating the athletic intensity. This film does have riveting cinematic sports moments, but they are elevated with much more intrigue as we get to understand the overall ramifications of everything. Something that was elevated by the excellent performances. Both Stallone and Caine shine in their roles, and they will grab your attention and compel you to see how the story is going to end for them. The direction was excellent by Josh Huston. The film feels large scale, but it comes across in a very subtle way that really helps lock it in its time period, as a film like this being made now would most likely feel a little overly clean and polished, as I think the grittier, more raw look to this film definitely served to its advantage. Next up, we have Get Carter from 2000. Now this one isn't nearly as good as the original Get Carter from 1971, but it does have some merits to it. Stallone is a little flat at times, but he was also very convincing during others. The story follows an unsavory criminal enforcer from Las Vegas who comes out to Seattle in search for his estranged little brother's killer. This really opens up some story arcs and character dynamics that are, for the most part, entertaining to sit back and watch evolve. Now, I spent many years growing up in Seattle, so I may have an affinity for this movie. The Seattle backdrops are all well captured, and the cold, dreary, rain-soaked locations all fit the mood of the story perfectly in regards to the overall tone. It does have some pacing issues, and the action could have been a little bit more intense, but this is still a solid film to me. There is a collection of interesting character dynamics that are explored, and the performances all really are more than enough to pull you in. Mickey Rourke, Rachel Lee Cook, John C. McGinley, and Alan Cummings all provide this film some strong moments, but I think they could have really added more had the writing allowed. But in the end, this was a seedy, dark, but equally intense action drama. And finally, we have Cobra from 1986. Now this is definitely a memorable movie for several aspects, but it still, in my opinion, is a little forgotten in the mix of Stallone films, despite delivering a classic action character and some over-the-top great one-liners. Stallone in this one works for the Zombie Squad, and when a witness is being pursued by a killer called the Night Slasher, it will be Stallone's job to protect her. This is a classic movie because of some of its action scenes, as well as because of some of its cheesy elements. Brigitte Nielsen was not good in this movie, but she still kind of works for the part. The musical montages throughout just lock the entire film in the time period. The dialogue almost feels purposely cheesy at times, but you can really tell that at the time they were serious and trying to make a gritty, dark cop thriller. There's tons of action. There's some great car chases, Stallone serving as a grounded one-man army, and a classic villain played by Brian Thompson. The locations also create a vibrant California settings that just add a lot of elements to this movie, and it provides this great settings and locations for some awesome 80s action and a classic third act showdown. And that's my list, guys. 10 Stallone films that I feel are underrated, underappreciated, overlooked, undermentioned, or even forgotten altogether. So let me know in the comments below, what are some of your favorite Stallone movies? My top 4 are definitely First Blood, Rocky, Cobra, and Cliffhanger. I really hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you did, make sure to drop it a like. Also, make sure to subscribe so you can keep up on all my new videos and my reviews. Thanks so much for watching. As always, you guys are all awesome. I'm Anthony. This is the Silver Screen Analysis, and I'll see you at the movies.